There's nothing like being in the stands cheering on your favorite team. Game Time is your hack to unlocking amazing tickets in just a few taps. Plus, their Game Time guarantee means you can trust you'll get 100% authentic tickets at the best price. Fees are always included, so what you see is what you pay. Get the best deals on sports tickets. Download the Game Time app and create an account to start searching for tickets to upcoming games and events. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time.
Now tuned into the greatest.
So when that bag come, I won't fumble. I'm just stacking on the low, but hey, I'm tired of being humble. Let me get to it. That motivation music. Get control of your life, don't let nobody else do it. Cause we're not gonna have Metro Ep.512 cruising. Feel like you winning on the ground.
Yes, sir. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Run with me, Manny Wilson, all the way from Detroit to Chicago to your speakers and headphones. Now, I appreciate you tuning in to the first interactive sports podcast, a community that makes sure your voice is heard. So if you hear something you agree with, you disagree with, you like or you dislike, just hit us up on the voicemail line, 219-413-9405. And of course, we will play your take back on our next episode. And then speaking of episodes, shout out to SeatGeek for sponsoring this episode. Get $20 off your first ticket purchase when you use the promo code The Run Podcast. Now, this code can only be applied for first-time users on the mobile app or website. So I don't know about you, but it's a lot of concerts happening. Some games happening, playoff baseball for MLB, even though my Tigers got eliminated. Football season's going on. Use that code, go to one of these games. Speaking of the games that's happening this week, coming up in week 7 of the NFL primetime slot, we have the Atlanta Falcons playing the Buffalo Bills Monday in prime time. And honestly, bro, I'm still a little scared. Like, I know it was a big emotional win over the Buffalo Bills last week. It was great. We kind of shocked the world, shocked a lot of people, including myself, even though I was a little nervous about the Falcons winning and what team would show up. But ultimately, this was a big emotional win for the Falcons last week. So I'm hoping they don't come into San Francisco with an injured team that they have and underestimate them, because 49ers are also a top dog as well. Like, this is a team that was here. They were in the Super Bowl just 2 years ago. And they've been in the playoffs consistently over the past few years. So, with the 49ers, you can't really count them out. I know they missed it last year. I know they have a lot of injuries, but Shanahan, you can always bet that he's going to cook up something on the offensive end. He's been to the Super Bowl multiple times. This team was just there 2 seasons ago. They're always competitive. So it's just like, you can't really ride the momentum of, oh yeah, we beat the Bills into this game of week 7 against the 49ers, because if you give them a chance, they will continue. They will figure out a way to beat you. Now, they're 4-2, and a lot of their games were decided by less than 5 points. Actually, all of the 49ers games were decided by less than 5 points besides one, and they haven't really played a lot of top defenses. I think they played the Texans, who are ranked top defensively, but ultimately, Texans struggle early on getting that offense rolling. So I don't want to discredit any sort of wins or losses that the 49ers have. But above all, I know it's probably going to be a dogfight if it's not a blowout. And I don't think we'll just go in there and blow the 49ers out, considering that they're solid offensively. I know 5 points or less in all of their games besides one is something I'm paying attention to. It tells me they can close out games. It's telling me that they're figuring out ways to win these ball games. So Falcons are 3-2. They had an ugly loss against the Panthers, an ugly loss. It wasn't really ugly, but the Buccaneers. So 2 division losses, which are rough, but ultimately they showed last week what they can be. I just hope we continue to be consistent, because the Falcons without that consistency are not going to be competitive at all this season. So some statistics here that I want to give heading into this Falcons-49ers matchup is Falcons are second in yards per game offensively. And the interesting thing about the Falcons being second in yards per game offensively is the fact that they played less games than everybody else so far. So that's extremely impressive. And they also have a lot of injuries going on right now on the offensive line and with the wide receivers. So very impressive for the Falcons. Defensively, they're pretty nice too. So first in defensive yards allowed, first in passing yards allowed, first in total yards allowed. On the defensive end, yes, they did play one less game than everybody, but I still think it says a lot that they can keep themselves in that top 5 conversation, yet alone first out of all the defenses in the NFL. So definitely want to give them some credit. 49ers have some statistics on their side as well. 49ers concern me because they're first in passing yards per game offensively. They're sixth in total yards per game offensively. And they also have a lot of injuries on that 49ers offense. And the latest sort of reports are saying Mac Jones is going to be the starting quarterback instead of Brock Purdy. So this does give me a little hope. No Fred Warner on defense for the 49ers. No Nick Bosa on defense for the 49ers. So there are some areas to be exposed on the 49ers. However, again, the last thing I want to do is underestimate the type of team that they'll come out and perform as, because Shanahan always finds a way to get the offense going. I have to give him respect. I hate how it ended with him in Atlanta of not actually finishing the Super Bowl, whatever. But you got to give Shanahan his credit. He always finds a way to get the offense rolling somehow, some way. So with that being said, even though Mac Jones is at quarterback, he'll probably make something happen. However, the aspect too that's interesting is no Bosa, no Fred Warner for the 49ers. The defense is not really as scary without Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. Now, these are huge hits to the 49ers defense, and it'll probably help the Falcons running game a lot tremendously, and also open up opportunities for passing because they won't be as aggressive on the pass rush from the 49ers. So we'll be able to obviously get the run game going with Bijan Robinson and his dominance of so far through the first 6 weeks of football, but ultimately it won't be a gimme type of game. One of the things that's interesting, too, is with this Falcons defense, looking at how beat down the 49ers offense is. And I know they got some injuries there and they still have weapons. But the thing is, when Mac Jones is going to be playing and he is going to be starting with the 49ers here, it makes me a little excited because Mac Jones has been giving up a lot of sacks so far with this team. Like, the defense in Atlanta, like, we kind of have an advantage looking at this 49ers matchup here because defensively, Atlanta has been balling. We've got a sack in each game that we've played. And for Mac Jones, whenever he's been playing his last 3 starts, he's given up 8 sacks. And last week, he gave up 6 sacks against Tampa Bay. So I'm expecting the Atlanta Falcons defense to go out there and at least throw Mac Jones on the floor at least 3 to 4 times in this game. Now, I'll be happy if we get him at least 2 to 3 times minimum. But ultimately, we got Josh Allen sacked 4 times in that matchup last week. So I'm definitely expecting us to go ahead and get Mac Jones down a few times. So the Atlanta Falcons also generated the 6th highest pressure percentage so far in the NFL. So that's a plus to their defensive side. And, bringing Mac Jones down is something that's on my list. So I'm expecting the Falcons to definitely get to Mac Jones and kind of just bull rush him, bring him some pressure and get him down on the ground to slow this 49ers offense down. But above all, I'm not trying to overlook anything from the 49ers perspective because McCaffrey is still probably going to be playing. I think they'll get Juwan Jennings back as well. Don't quote me on that part, but Purcell, he might be back as well. So you got a lot of different guys and some weapons on the 49ers offense that they'll come out and try and utilize. But above all, I'm expecting the shootout here with this Atlanta Falcons and 49ers matchup. Man, I think it'll be something to look forward to. One of the things that stick out to me too, and I brought it up last week about the Falcons being genuine contenders. So I was saying, okay, we have to actually be consistent to be contenders. I think the Falcons have to be consistent to be contenders. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. The absolute large, probably the biggest win of the season, I think that's safe to say, was against the Bills. So we had the win against the Bills last week, and my biggest concern was how consistent can the Falcons be? Which team will the Falcons be? And that's also my largest concern for this week coming up against the 49ers is how consistent can this team be? Yeah, we had a heck of a performance against the Bills last week. Offensive explosion, defense showed up big, 2 interceptions, 4 sacks. It was huge, but how consistent can this Atlanta Falcons team be? And that's ultimately what's going to decide if they go on to be true contenders in the regular season and down in the postseason maybe, but ultimately, they just got to be consistent. We started off a little rough, and they picked it up. We stepped up big. Some things looked a lot different after the bye week. So I'm hoping we get the same sort of consistency. And if we do, then I think this will be a fun game for Atlanta Falcons fans. I'll put it that way. If we can stay consistent, it'll be a fun game. But ultimately, I definitely got the Atlanta Falcons beating the 49ers in this matchup. I think a lot of statistics just side with the Atlanta Falcons defense and offense in this sense. The biggest concern I have with the 49ers in this matchup is really that they're first in passing yards per game offensively. However, but to combat that, the Falcons first in passing yards allowed defensively, first in defensive yards allowed defensively. So I'm pretty confident that the Falcons defense can step up, and they've also got a sack in every one of their games they've played this season, even when the team was looking very inconsistent. Last week, they're coming off a huge rally from the defensive line of getting Josh Allen down multiple times. So I think this will definitely be a good game, but I got the Atlanta Falcons coming out on top for sure. So excited about this matchup, man, and I can't wait to watch this in prime time. I definitely don't want to get embarrassed. The thing I am most concerned about, I will say, is yes, I'm picking the Falcons win, but I just really hope the Falcons don't come out in Falcon. That's just what I don't want to see. I don't want to see all the hype go to the Falcons. Oh, they're good. They're first in defensive yards allowed. They're first in passing yards allowed on defense. They're this in running. They have a great offense. Look at what they did last. I don't want all that hype to turn the Falcons into doing the Falcon. I just don't want that. That's my biggest concern. It's consistency. So I'm hoping they show up big. I'm hoping they show up consistent in similar ways that they did last week. I want it to look even better. Still don't know if we'll get Ray McCloud back or Darnell Mooney back or even Jake Matthews back since he went down in the Bills game. But if we get some guys coming back from these injuries, I definitely have a lot more faith in the Falcons. But oh, man, just the consistency things is the main thing that just worry me with this Atlanta Falcons team. So I'm a little concerned, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm expecting a good game in prime time. Other than that, look, man, we got some more stuff we're going to jump into. Some news for the run, just kind of going to recap the scores. And then we'll break down some statistical things of, who is top dogs in defense and who's top dogs in offense, because a lot of things right now, we don't really know who's good and who's not. So we're going to break this down a little bit, and maybe we can get a little bit more answers, or maybe you can use it for fantasy, betting, whatever you use it for. Just have some knowledge on what teams is leading and what categories and all of these different things. So we'll break that down in just a sec. Don't go anywhere. We got some news for the run, and it's halftime. Let's do it. All right, man, welcome back to The Run with me, Manny Wilson. I appreciate you for tuning in. Of course, if you want to go ahead and leave your thoughts, hit us up on the voicemail line, 219-413-9405. And of course, we'll play it back on our next episode. Go check out the voicemails that was left on the last episode, actually. It was pretty cool. I had some Falcons fans call in prior to the big win of the Buffalo Bills. So it was cool to play that back after the Falcons ended up winning. So anyway, some games that we got happening in week 7 of the NFL. It's already week 7, which is crazy. It means we're almost at that midway point pretty soon. But anyway, kicking it off, Thursday night football, Steelers versus the Bengals happening in Cincinnati. No Joe Burrow, obviously. So personally, I'm siding with the Pittsburgh Steelers to win this game. After that, Sunday football, we have the Falcons and 49ers in prime time. This game is happening at Levi Stadium. Expecting a very good game, so listen to the first half, and I'm expecting a good game. I do have the Falcons winning for multiple reasons that I'm not going to restate again, so listen to the first half. Other than that, we got the Rams playing the Jaguars in England. This game is happening at 8:30 a.m. This is Central Time, Eastern Time, probably 9:30 in Pacific Time. Boy, you're getting up at 6 a.m. sharp, which is just insane. I can't believe that they doing a home team like this. The Rams are in LA. If you're in LA, you got to get up at 6 in the morning to watch this game. Man, I know I get it's beneficial for the people in London at that time, but the home team fans can't even watch the game unless they get up at 6 a.m. To me, that's outrageous. I couldn't imagine. Like, for some people, Sunday is their only day off, and you still got to get up early and watch this team. It's crazy. So I probably won't be watching this Jaguars-Rams game. I would love to, but I'm just not getting up early to watch this game. So I'll probably catch second half or whatever. I'm just not going to get up early, man. Sundays are days I get to sleep in, and I have to take advantage of that. I'm sorry. Other than that, we got the Saints playing the Bears at Soldier Field in Chicago. Dolphins playing the Browns. Patriots playing the Titans. Raiders will take on the Chiefs in Missouri at Arrowhead Stadium. Eagles playing the Vikings in Minneapolis. Panthers will take on the New York Jets. Now, the Jets here are yet to win a game. They still haven't won a single game. And honestly, I don't really think they'll beat the Panthers because, yes, the Panthers, they can be a laughingstock at times. But usually after Bryce Young throws that first interception, he turns into a completely new person, turns into Tom Brady, turns into Cam Newton. He's just like a completely different quarterback after that first interception for some reason. But in the last few games, after Bryce Young threw his first interception, he started dominating, ended up winning the game. So, crazy. But I definitely got the Panthers beating the Jets over here, so interested in that game for sure. The Giants will take on the Broncos. I'm curious about how the Giants will look after that big win last week. So, Broncos are 4-2. They've been rolling right now, and they're in this conversation about statistics that I'm about to have. So, Colts will play the Chargers. In Inglewood, that's going to be a great matchup as well at SoFi Stadium. But I think I want the Colts to win, and I have the Colts winning. But I'm expecting a duel here, and this is definitely one of them games I'm looking forward to watching come Sunday. Cowboys and Commanders will also be a good game. It's happening midday. Ooh, man, you love to see this, but Cowboys are going to be home. I'm anticipating this matchup. And then Packers will play the Cardinals. And for Monday Night Football, another doubleheader. One, I don't know who keeps bringing these double headers for Monday Night Football. Personally, it's hard. It's hard to watch both, man. It's hard to be fully invested in two games on Monday Night Football, especially if your favorite team is playing on one of these games. So I'm not really a fan of these double headers on Monday Night Football. It's a little weird to me, bro. It's a little weird, honestly. But you got the Lions and the Buccaneers playing each other on Monday Night Football, and man, this is going to be a great matchup. I'm so excited about this matchup between the Buccaneers and Lions. Lions are 4-2, lost last week against the Chiefs. Buccaneers are 5-1. Baker Mayfield has been on a tear. He's been closing games out. He had comeback wins early in the season. Offensively, they're not really ranked as a high priority team. When you look at the top 5 teams in yards per game or top 5 in rushing yards or passing yards, they're not really there. Like, you can't find them, but yet they will find a way to beat you, and they've been getting wins. So I'm intrigued, and I'm just expecting the Buccaneers to be, I'm expecting this game to be a shootout for sure. Between Lions and Buccaneers, man, they saw each other in the playoffs a couple years back or a couple seasons back. So I'm curious. I'm expecting a good game here. And then Lions, obviously, you know, they just came off of the L against the Kansas City Chiefs, and that was just a crazy game in itself there. So, oh man, I'm expecting a good game. Lions are also pretty nice, but you can't really find, they're in points per game right now. I think they're second in points per game as of right now, behind the Colts, which is crazy. But Lions are definitely a great offensive team. Buccaneers are definitely a great offensive team with the MVP on there, who I think is the MVP, Baker Mayfield. So it'll be an interesting matchup here to see what can go down, man. So both teams dealing with a lot of injuries. Baker Mayfield doesn't have half of his receivers or any receivers, truthfully. Lions done lost half of their defense. So it'll be interesting to see this Buccaneers-Lions matchup. I think if I have to choose a winner, I don't want to really go against Baker Mayfield because of how he's been closing these games out in the first half of this season or through so far of week 7 in this season. Baker Mayfield has been on a tear, so I don't want to go against him, but the Lions are at home. So I think because the Lions are at home, I'm going to go with the Detroit Lions to win this game over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Plus, they are coming off a kind of a bogus L in the Kansas City Chiefs game. So I think the Lions will bounce back and end up winning this game and giving the Buccaneers another L. So it's going to be a great matchup, though. So I'm geeked for this on Monday Night Football. So other than that, you got the Texans and the Seahawks in Monday Night Football, and I probably won't be paying too much attention to this game, truthfully, but I'm hoping it's another good matchup that we get to see. But double headers, I'm going to be focusing on the Buccaneers and Lions in this game. So excited about that. Now, however, look, we got some other things too, because the numbers in the NFL right now, when you look at all the teams who are good or proclaimed to be good, or the teams who might be bad in the NFL, it's hard to really gauge who's who and who's doing what and what teams are doing what. So the thing that I wanted to break down is just the stats of who's doing what on defense and who's doing what on offense. So starting with the defense, this is the top 5 defenses based on yards per game right now. You have the Atlanta Falcons, the Denver Broncos, Cleveland Browns, Houston Texans, and the Green Bay Packers are the top 5 defenses in yards allowed per game. Now, to break this down a little bit and to dissect each of these teams and what they're doing defensively, the Falcons, they did have a bye week. So that's partially of why they're leading in defensive yards per game. Obviously, it's still very impressive because they are keeping their name in that top 5 conversation, whereas there's other teams who play less than 6 games so far to this point, and yet they're not in that conversation of top 5. So I still think it's very impressive for them. They're first in passing yards allowed, first in total yards allowed. So Falcons, that defense has proved to be legit so far in every game this season. They've also gotten a sack. They sacked Josh Allen 4 times. They forced Josh Allen to throw 2 interceptions as well in that game last week in primetime. So, Falcons defense has proved to be legit to an extent. The only thing that has always been my concern is just the consistency. How consistent are the Falcons going to be through the rest of the season, especially on both ends of the ball, and more particularly for this conversation on the defensive end. Now, number 2, we had the Denver Broncos. Broncos are second in yards per game allowed defensively. They're third in passing yards allowed per game. They're second in points per game allowed, and they're sixth in rushing yards allowed per game. Denver Broncos are an elite team defensively. It's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. They're scoring on the offensive end, keeping them in a lot of games. But defensively, this team is only allowing 15 points per game against them. And the AFC West is nice. So the Broncos are nothing to play with when you talk about who's legit on what side of the ball. Safe to say Broncos are elite defensively. Yeah, they got a 4-2 record too. So they're sitting pretty comfortable right now. They look good, especially when you watch or you put together the eye test along with the statistics. So Broncos definitely solidified that 2 spot in defensive yards per game. As of right now, this is up to week 7, so anything can change after this week. However, the Denver Broncos or the Cleveland Browns is at number 3 right now in rushing yards allowed per game. They're third in defensive yards allowed per game, and the Cleveland Browns are also 7th in passing yards allowed per game so far. Now, despite all of these things about the Cleveland Browns, this is a team, defensively, they're the real deal. It's safe to say Browns are the real deal defensively. I mean, you're third in total yards allowed per game defensively, third in rushing yards allowed per game, 7th in rushing yards allowed per game. They just need help from the offense. They're the real deal defensively, but they haven't scored over 17 points in a single game of the season just yet. And we're up to week 7. So the Browns, they got a lot of work to do offensively. It's only so many games the defense can keep them in games and competing and staying in the game. But you can't really do much if you're not getting points on the board to outscore the other team. So defensively, Browns are the real deal for sure. But they're 1-5. So they're just not translating to getting wins on the offensive side. So that's the change I need to see from the Cleveland Browns. 4, Houston Texans are 4th in defensive yards per game. They had a bye week. So they also, played one less game than a lot of other people. But ultimately, this team, they're pretty solid defensively so far. They play less games, and it's still very impressive. But 4th in defensive yards allowed per game, which is pretty good. 1st in points per game allowed for the Texans. And they're 5th in passing yards allowed for the Texans as well. So, these type of things are good to see if you're a Texans fans. And the most impressive thing for me is, yes, obviously the Texans defense is stepping up big time right now, but teams are only averaging 12 points per game against the Texans. Nobody has got above 10 points against the Texans besides the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have the potential MVP in Baker Mayfield. So the offense struggled early on, which kind of hurt that record and the overall narrative with the Houston Texans. The O-line couldn't hold anything, but the last 2 weeks, they've won 2 straight games, and they hung up 44 on the Ravens and held the Ravens to 3 points. So if anything, your doubts about CJ Stroud and the offense, those are, I get it. Those are, that's acceptable. I understand those type of doubts with the Texans. But defensively, there's no doubt about it that this team is pretty elite defensively. I think they're the real deal. allowing only 12 points per game against anybody is impressive. Holding everybody to 10 or less besides one team is pretty impressive so far up to week 6. So man, you got to give them some credit there. And then the fifth team here is the Green Bay Packers. The Packers, they did have a bye week as well, but they're first in rushing yards allowed and fifth in the total yards allowed per game. So Packers, they kind of got it figured out on both ends of the ball so far. 3-1, and I mean, they're looking at another matchup too that they might get some wins on. So it'll be interesting to see what the Packers can do. Now, however, we will discuss more of the offensive side of this at a different time. Only thing I'll say right now for the offense in terms of yards per game is the team's ranking in yards per game total right now. Top 5 teams based on yards per game offensively is the Dallas Cowboys, the Falcons at number 2, the Buffalo Bills at 3, Indiana or Colts at number 4, Rams at number 5. So those are the top 5. You got Cowboys, Falcons, Bills, Colts, and Rams based on offensive yards per game offensively. So second in passing yards is the Cowboys. They've been doing their thing. Third in points per game. The thing that probably stands out to me the most out of all these teams is really the Colts. The Colts, fourth in total offensive yards per game. Colts are also first in points per game, which is impressive. And they look like the real deal so far. And you can't just discredit what Indiana Jones is doing right now. Daniel Jones is balling, and he's fifth in pass, or that he has the team fifth in passing, I should say. So Colts, they're the real deal, man. I think if you haven't watched the Colts so far, you definitely need to tune in and see what kind of brand of football they play, because they look good, man. I would continue to vouch for the Colts and what they're doing, because they actually really do look good, and they're an elite team. So what's crazy about this is, like, each time you go to a different stat category, it's a new top 5 and who does what good and who does what the best. So if anything, this only shows that there's a lot of good teams in football, and this is only the top 5 of each team. If I was to do the top 10, it is a little more, like, you see a little bit more of the same teams in that top 10 compared to the top 5, but the only teams that's showing up the most offensively in a consistent stat category is really Colts, Bills, Falcons. Outside of those 3, you're not really seeing that many teams. So truth is, it's hard to get a good gauge of what teams is so good right now through the first 7 weeks of football when the stat categories are so evenly spread amongst everyone. So it's pretty cool. I like it. I love that we don't know who's going to go to the Super Bowl or anything right now. To me, it's one of the favorite things about this season so far. I love it. So fact is, there's just multiple good teams so far in the league. So that's all we got, man. I do appreciate you guys for tuning in. Of course, anyone who tapped in on the live, you listening on Instagram, Twitter, or I don't really post on Twitter, but TikTok, YouTube, follow us on all of that stuff at The Run Podcast. Follow us on YouTube, The Run with Manny Wilson. And other than that, man, the positive note on the day is just going to be continue to put your best foot forward. Simple as that. That's all I'm going to leave it as. And other than that, man, I'm up out of here. I do appreciate you for tuning in, and we'll be back later on next week. And so on and so on and so on.